Hello team and welcome back. This time I'm going to be teaching you how to sharpen your Sloyd knife. Very simple. I'm going to be using my float glass and Jarrah wood sharpening systems. I'll be using the strops as well, and I'll just take you through the process and hopefully it will help you at home sharpening your own blades. So the first thing to note is, what grit of sandpaper or abrasive medium do we need to use? If we need to remove dings, nicks, really kind of freshen that blade up, you might want to go to 240, maybe 400 grit, but that's the only time that you'd use those very coarse grits. If the blade is just no longer coming back from the strop, somewhere around about the 1200, 1000 grit is pretty much all you'll need. Work up to around about 5,000 to 7,000 grit and then go straight into your stropping and you'll be done. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So here I have a Sloyd knife, very good condition. It's just no longer got that sharp edge. So we're going to go through the grits, going to go through the strops and see how we go. So firstly, let's show you how simple and easy it is to apply the adhesive papers. I've got 3 sticky back papers. We have 1200, we've got 3000 and 7000. Bit of a jump there, 3 and 7, but it's not really going to make any difference. You could go to 5, but I think that's almost overkill. So let's start with the float glass block. You've seen these before. If you haven't seen this video on my sharpening system, hit the link up there. That will take you to it, and come back here whenever you're ready. So all of them have a non-slip mat on the back, so you don't need any jigs, don't need nothing. You literally just stick it down to a table or put it on a table and you're ready to go. So down it goes, and we're going to use our first grit at 1200. As I said, peel and stick, very simple. And notice how clean this is compared to having to soak stones and all the mess that comes with it. No need for oil, no need for water, no need for expensive stones. It's literally that simple. That will now stay put there and it's ready to use. What you might like to do is just put a couple of drops of water on here, and this is really just to reduce any dust, and it helps the sandpaper last that little bit longer. We're going to rub that in now, and what you might want to do, especially if you're just starting out your sharpening, is take a Sharpie pen and pen in that bevel, and that just allows you to see where you're abrading the steel and you can make adjustments as and when you need to. I'm not going to bother. I've done it enough times to be very confident with what I'm doing, so I'm going to go straight into it. The first thing we want to always make sure we do is we raise a burr. A burr is a very fine wire edge which indicates we've apexed the cutting edge. It means that we've brought these 2 bevels to a very fine point and we are now sharp, and then we'd work up through the grits to refine the scratch pattern and then go straight on to the strops. So we're going to always, whenever we're using sandpaper like this, it's always a good idea to go away from the cutting edge. It makes no difference in terms of the sharpness. It's simply so you don't cut the sandpaper at any stage. We're going to place the blade down. We're going to put our fingers onto the bevel. This is really important because it allows us to ensure we're engaging that bevel and we're not going too far back or too far forwards. And we're going to drag that blade back across the abrasive medium. As we get to the tip, we don't lift the handle, but instead we press with our fingers down, and that will then engage that bevel as it comes round the belly and up to the tip. We can then have a look, and you can see we have now, instead of reflective tram lines, they are slightly matte. Of course, we've scratched it. Now, as we're using sandpaper, the abrasiveness of the sandpaper will diminish over time, so we're going to alternate passes back and forth until we have that burr. So we're now going this way, press the bevel down with our thumbs. We're then going to push the blade away. And notice this block doesn't move around. That's really important. It doesn't need a clamp. It's just very convenient. Have another look. We've abraded that really nicely. We're going to repeat this a couple of times and then we'll look for that burr. The block's staying nice and stable, it's not skidding around. If you wanted extra height, you can always place it into a jig or a clamp, it's entirely up to you. So now that we've done that, what we need to do is check to see if we've got that burr by tilting it with a light, ideally coming at 45 degrees down, and that way it will show if there's a burr there through a reflective light. Now you can use, I can't quite feel anything yet, you can use a hand lens to check. But at the moment, I'd say we've got a tiny touch more to go, so we'll do a few more. And we want to raise as small of a burr as possible. We don't want to be wasting more steel than necessary. That's really important to point out. The knives are very expensive, and if we're going to start abrading them unnecessarily, it's just a total waste. Okay, let's have a look now. I could even see just then in that reflection that I've got a burr. I don't know if you can pick it up on the camera. If I tilt it this way, you may be able to see a wire edge forming along here. Bring it back one more time. So I've scratched this way. That means that the burr's going to wrap round and it will be on this side now. And I can now see a very, very fine, it's like a glint. And that's exactly what we're looking for. As soon as we've got a glint all the way along that cutting edge, that means that we've brought those two bevels to an apex, and we are all the way there. I might just touch a tiny bit more at the tip. And there we have it. All the way along that cutting edge. That is essential. Once we've raised that, we have done the most difficult part. Now we're just going to go on, we're going to remove this tape. Very simple, very easy. If there's a bit of water that's come underneath it, just wipe that off. Again, there's no mess, and that's what's so beautiful about this system. We're going to peel and stick the next abrasive medium down. This is now 3000, like so. Very simple. Again, a few drops of water, it just really helps to keep that paper lasting as long as possible, stops the swarth building up, stops the clog up of the paper. And then of course what we need to do is wipe that blade down. We don't want any 1200 grit remaining on here. We're now going to do exactly the same thing. We'll probably do around about 10 to 15 passes, give or take. We're just going to refine that scratch pattern now. Same again, onto the cutting edge, push down with the fingers, onto the bevel. As we come to the belly, we press the fingers down towards the belly, let that handle come up and no more. If you're going to start to lift that handle, there's a chance you're going to start to round that very fine edge at the top, and you'll start to have far more of a belly than what you really want. So come all the way back. And probably already you can see now why I've designed and I use this over all of the other options. It's simple, clean, quick, don't need to flatten anything, don't need separate jigs or clamps to hold it still. It's just a very fuss-free method and very affordable. It costs me about 10 cents per sharpen or 10 cents per piece of abrasive paper here. And if you do that, I don't know, maybe 4 times a year, it's really going to equate to next to nothing. And that's all we'll need to do on this finer grit. We've removed those 1200 grit scratch patterns, or that scratch pattern. We're going to wipe the blade off again. Have another quick look at the bevel. You can see the tram lines that we've got going on there, and it's now slightly more polished. Now we're going to pull this up. Again, no mess, no fuss, no need for any acetone or anything. It's literally that simple. We're going to move on to our final grit now, which is 7000, and this is going to give us a beautiful polish. So we're going to place this one down and line it up nicely. And then we've already gone from 3000 straight up to 7000 within 3 or 4 seconds. Bit of water, put that down to one side. You don't have to use water, it's just my preference. And we're going to wipe that blade just one more time. And then we're going to now move on to the 7000 grit. This is such a fine grit, and it really will give you a beautiful mirror polish, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. Again, 15, 20 passes is all you need. The most important thing here is that we've raised a burr. Once that burr's been raised, it's just a case of refining the scratch pattern. Even already, I've done about 7 or 8 passes. It's very difficult to show you, or possibly to show you the reflection on here because of the way the light's coming down, but hopefully you can see that we've got a reflective polish already on this blade. We've only done a few passes. So we'll continue. And by having that pen, if you wanted to pen the bevel in, you'll be able to see straight away where you are and where you're not hitting that cutting edge. And it does take a bit of practice, but bear with it, give yourself some time. The most important thing is that you've raised that burr. Once the burr's been raised, it's very likely you're going to get a sharp edge. It's just a case of stropping or going through the grits, stropping that burr away, and you won't have any problems. The main reason that people struggle to raise the burr is microconvection through poor quality strops that will give, and that end up almost giving you a dome shape to your cutting edge. So you'll be sharpening all of the bevel, but not actually the most important part, which is, as I said, that cutting edge. So now we're done here. Again, we can put the blade down. Very simple, peel and stick, peel and stick, peel and stick, peel and stick. No need to clean that glass block. That's as clean as it'll ever need to be. We're going to now pop on the case. Oh. And then we're going to move on to the strops. We start with the suede strop. Which one's our suede? Here it is. We're going to wipe that blade down again, put that down onto a table, make sure it doesn't move around. Going to wipe the blade. And then, don't need any water this time, but we do need compound. The compound goes onto the suede strop, not the leather. I use Veritas. Hopefully you've seen the other video about my sharpening system. I use Veritas. I apply it every time, but just a small amount, nothing too much. All we need, blow away the excess. We don't want any of that compound around. And then we are going to go straight into stropping. Now, the reason we strop is we get a far finer edge from a strop than we do from any kind of abrasive that we're going to use typically. We sharpen going away from that cutting edge, and we also want to strop in that same method. And the reason why, another reason why I go away from the cutting edge is because then I can repeat that same action, that same movement on the strop, which just builds up muscle memory. So now we're ready. We've got beautiful polished bevels, as hopefully you can see in that camera. And we're going to do exactly the same thing again now, going away from that cutting edge. And when you've sharpened a blade, you want to do about 50 passes or so. That ensures you've removed the burr and you've taken this compound from a fairly coarse grit to start with at around about the 8,000 grit, and we've abraded it down to around about the 60,000 grit. And that's what we're looking at doing. Do 50 or so passes. I'll try and do them quickly. I want to keep this all in one take so you see there's no trickery, there's nothing going on. I'm not clearing up any mess. It's literally from start to finish, and yeah, you can't really go wrong. So I'm putting even pressure on that bevel. If you're using a Moranev 106, you might want to start applying more pressure towards that cutting edge, simply because that's where the hardened steel is. That will abrade slower, so by applying a bit more pressure there, you will abrade that bevel more evenly. Same thing again, I'm going down pressure here, I'm easing up on the pressure as I come towards the belly, and then I flip back round again. So we'll do about 10 more passes, and then we're going to wipe this blade off, remove the compound. At this point, it's probably a good idea just to check that you haven't got a burr. So again, draw that blade away. If you're touching the bottom bevel, you'll see the burr on the top bevel. Aim it with 45 degrees of light coming down. I can't see anything that side at all. It's just beautifully polished, but we'll just check on the other way. Push that burr to the other side. I see absolutely nothing. So now we can move on to the final grit, which is the leather, and that's going to give us that very fine, very sharp edge. That goes straight back into its case. Keeps everything nice and clean. We're now going to use a tissue just to wipe off this compound from the blade. Make sure that when it goes onto the leather, it doesn't transfer any compound on there. That's all good. And then what we're going to do is just grab a tissue here, just wipe away this compound. We don't want the compound going onto the underneath side of the strop. And then we'll move on to the leather. Last stage, final stage, this is going to give you the sharpest edge possible, and it's worth doing. You can get away without doing it, but it's definitely worth doing simply because of the results you'll get from using it. So we'll place it down again. We're ready to strop. Same action, go away from that cutting edge so you don't cut into the leather, and don't apply compound to this. Really, really important. So we'll do, again, roughly 50 passes. It doesn't have to be exact. If, however, when you're carving, you just want to bring that edge back to sharp again, you'll get away with 20 passes or so. Take you about maybe a minute to do your stropping every 30, 40 minutes or so, and that will then be all you need to maintain, as long as the steel's good quality, for months at a time. As soon as the leather starts to compress, that's when you're going to start to have all your problems, from the edge dulling, edge not getting as sharp. Of course, microconvection making it difficult to re-sharpen. It's just a frustration, and it's a big frustration, and so easily avoided. We're going to call that a day there. That's all we're going to do. I don't want to keep you waiting any longer than necessary. And of course, now we'll test that edge. There's no point in having a blade, going through all this, and then obviously not testing it. So let's get straight into the test. Give it a bit of a wipe down. There we go. Now, one of the other really useful things about this system is there is no mess. There is no mess, no soaking, no nothing, no having to clean up anything, no chemicals, no stone everywhere. Simple, clean, easy to do. All you have is a couple of sheets of these that you can chuck in the bin, and no need to worry about anything else. So I'm lacking arm hair here, but we'll do what we can. Hopefully you can see, without any problems whatsoever, a quick pass leaves a beautiful clean cut. There's no damage to the skin. It's not digging in. It's not tearing the skin. It simply passes over the top, very nice and smooth. Of course, we can do a paper test. Everyone likes to see a bit of a paper test. Now, the key with a paper test is that we don't just cut willy-nilly. We want to cut slowly and see if we've got any damage along this blade or whether we've missed anything. And if your knife is sharp, you'll be able to cut with a simple push cut at all different angles. I'll show you again. Finish it off without any problems whatsoever. If there were problems on your blade, you'd feel it catching, and there isn't any. Don't do this too often though. If you keep cutting paper, which is actually very abrasive, you'll start to dull that blade very, very quickly. But there we go. That's how I sharpen my Sloyd blade. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully it's answered some questions you have. Of course, we'll finish with putting a little bit of oil on here. This just helps reduce the chances of any rust forming, and that's all we need to do. If you do have any questions, of course, as always, chuck them in the comment section below. I do my best to answer those as soon as I can. It can be a little bit difficult to get through all of the comments, because I also have social media or other social media platforms such as Instagram, where I'm always answering comments. I'll do my best. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Push on that bell notification, because these videos will be coming out, and if you don't, you won't be notified. And of course, if you have enjoyed the content that I've shared, please consider popping over to my Patreon. The link is in the description below. It just really helps me, allows me to take the time out of the day to be able to produce these videos and share this information with you. I'll send you all my best wishes, warmest regards, happy sharpening, and I'll speak to you very, very soon.